So China just opened a shipping route that has the United States absolutely losing their minds. And honestly, I completely understand why. Picture this: a container ship leaves China, sails through the Arctic Ocean, and reaches the UK in just 18 days. Not through the Suez Canal, not through Panama, through the actual Arctic, the frozen north, the place we associate with polar bears and climate documentaries. And this isn't some experimental voyage. This is a fully operational commercial route that's already moving billions of dollars worth of goods. For decades, global trade has operated on a simple principle. There are three main routes connecting Asia to Europe, and Western powers control every single choke point. The Suez Canal handles over 50% of Asia-Europe trade. The Panama Canal connects the Pacific to the Atlantic, and the Cape of Good Hope is the backup plan when everything else fails. These routes made sense. They were efficient, they were established, and most importantly, they were controllable. But here's the thing about control. It only works when there are no alternative, and China just built a massive alternative. Let's talk about why this matters. China is the world's manufacturing hub. Your phone, your laptop, your clothes, probably even your coffee maker. Most of it comes from China, and all of that stuff needs to get to markets around the world. Traditionally, that meant sailing through waters where the US Navy could theoretically show up at any moment. It meant passing through canals where fees could be raised or access could be denied. It meant vulnerability. In 2021, a cargo ship got stuck in the Suez Canal for almost a week. One ship, one canal. And global trade basically stopped. The economic impact was estimated at nearly $10 billion per day. That's not a supply chain. That's a single point of failure waiting to happen. China looked at that situation and drew a very simple conclusion. Depending entirely on routes controlled by others is a strategic nightmare. So they did what any rational actor would do. They started looking for alternatives. Enter the Arctic route. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Arctic isn't that frozen solid. Well, yes and no. Thanks to climate change, which is absolutely a disaster for the planet, the Arctic ice is melting at an accelerating rate, and that melting ice is creating navigable waters where there used to be only ice sheet. It's one of those situations where a global catastrophe coincidentally creates a commercial opportunity. We're literally profiting from planetary destruction. Capitalism at its finest, folks. The numbers are actually wild. The traditional route through the Suez Canal is about 12,800 nautical miles. The new Arctic route, 8,000 to 8,900 nautical miles. That's a 30% reduction in distance. 30%. In shipping terms, that's absolutely massive. Less distance means less fuel, less time, and most importantly, less exposure to geopolitical pressure. But the really interesting part isn't just the route itself. It's the partnership that makes it possible. Russia controls the northern coastline that Arctic shipping must pass through. Russian icebreakers, Russian ports, Russian infrastructure. Without Russian cooperation, this route doesn't work. And right now, Russia is very motivated to cooperate. While Europe is reducing its dependence on Russian energy because of the situation in Ukraine, China is stepping in to fill that gap. This year alone, 60 million tons of Russian crude oil and 26 million tons of natural gas have flowed to China through the Arctic route. That's nearly triple the amount from 2020. Russia needs buyers. China needs energy. The Arctic route makes both things possible. It's a perfect alignment of interest. Russia provides the infrastructure and geographic access. China provides the demand and the investment. Both countries benefit from creating a trade corridor that bypasses Western control entirely. It's geopolitics dressed up as logistics. Now, let's address the obvious question. Can the US do anything about this? The short answer is not really. Trump has talked about retaking control of the Panama Canal by force, which sounds like something from the 19th century, but apparently we're doing that now. The US has raised fees for Chinese vessels at American ports. There's been diplomatic pressure on countries to limit cooperation with Chinese shipping companies. But here's the problem with all of those measures. They assume China needs to keep using the routes that America can pressure, and that assumption is becoming less true by the day. Every time the US tries to use maritime infrastructure as leverage, China has more incentive to develop alternatives. It's like trying to control someone by threatening to take away something they're already building a replacement for. The Arctic route isn't just about shipping goods faster or cheaper. though those are nice bonuses. It's about strategic autonomy. It's about ensuring that China's access to European markets can't be disrupted by conflicts or blockades in regions thousands of miles away. It's about building redundancy into the supply chain so that no single point of failure can bring everything crashing down. And this isn't even China's only alternative route. There's also the China-Europe Railway Express, trains that cross the entire Asian continent, connecting Chinese cities to European markets by land. These trains carry about 19% of China-Europe trade. That's almost 1/5 of all trade between the two regions, going by rail instead of ship. The costs are 3 times higher than maritime shipping, but delivery times are measured in weeks instead of months. Add it all up, and you get a picture of a country that's systematically building multiple pathways to every major market. If one route faces problems, there are 2 or 3 others ready to take up the slack. It's logistics as a form of risk management. It's infrastructure as geopolitical strategy. The really fascinating part is how this changes the fundamental dynamics of global power. For the past 75 years, American power has rested on a pretty simple foundation: control of the seas. After World War II, the US Navy became the dominant maritime force on the planet. That dominance meant the US could protect or threaten trade routes anywhere in the world. It was the ultimate strategic advantage. But that advantage only works if everyone needs to use routes that pass through waters where American naval power matters. The Arctic route is largely outside that sphere of influence. The railway routes go over land, where navies are irrelevant. Bilateral shipping agreements create direct connections that don't require passing through strategic chokepoints. China isn't trying to build a bigger navy to challenge American maritime dominance head-on. That would be expensive and probably ineffective. Instead, China is making American maritime dominance less relevant by creating alternatives that don't depend on it. It's strategic judo. Use your opponent's strength against them by making that strength less applicable. Now, before this sounds like some kind of master plan that was executed flawlessly, let's talk about the limitations. Because there are significant limitations, the Arctic route only works about 3 months per year, from July through September the rest of the time. Ice coverage makes navigation impossible, even with icebreaker escort. That's a pretty narrow window. Infrastructure in Russia's Far East is still relatively underdeveloped. Ports need upgrades. Rescue stations are sparse. Navigation systems need improvement. All of this requires massive investment and will take years to complete properly. You can't just decide to open an Arctic shipping route and have everything work perfectly from day one. Every ship needs icebreaker escort throughout the journey, which is expensive and complicated. You're not just paying for your ship's fuel, you're paying for the icebreaker's fuel too, plus all the coordination costs. It's not cheap. Weather conditions in the Arctic are unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Storms can blow up quickly. Visibility can drop to near zero. If something goes wrong up there, help is a long way away. These are real risks that need to be managed carefully. But here's the thing about all those limitations. They're being addressed. Climate change is extending the navigation window. Infrastructure is being built. Experience is being gained with each voyage. The trajectory is clear, even if the current state is imperfect. Projections suggest that by mid-century, the Arctic could be navigable for 6 months or more each year. When that happens, this route stops being a summer alternative and becomes a year-round primary pathway. That's when the real shift happens. That's when the geopolitical implications become impossible to ignore. Think about what that means for global trade patterns. Right now, the Suez Canal handles over 50% of Asia-Europe trade. It's the most important maritime choke point in the world. Egypt collects billions in transit fees every year. Insurance companies, shipping companies, logistics firms, entire national economies are built around the assumption that the Suez Canal is irreplaceable. But if the Arctic route becomes viable for 6 months per year, with 30% shorter distances, a significant portion of that traffic could shift north. Not all of it, obviously. The Suez will remain important, but it might go from handling 50% of trade to 30 or 40%. That's a massive redistribution of commerce and all the economic and political influence that comes with it. The same logic applies to other choke points. The Strait of Malacca, through which 60% of Middle Eastern oil flows to Asia, becomes less critical if China can source energy from Russia via the Arctic. The Panama Canal becomes less important if goods can reach Europe through Arctic or railway routes instead. We're watching the construction of a parallel global trade infrastructure that doesn't depend on the traditional system. And that parallel system is growing steadily year by year. Currently, the Arctic route carries about 12% of China-Europe freight. That might not sound like much, but it's growing rapidly. And more importantly, it provides insurance. If traditional routes face disruptions, there's an alternative available. This is infrastructure as insurance policy. It's redundancy as strategy. It's making sure that no single country or alliance can strangle your economy by controlling a few key waterways. And from China's perspective, that makes perfect sense. Why would you allow your entire economy to be vulnerable to decisions made in Washington, or Brussels, or Cairo? The historical parallels are actually pretty interesting. When European explorers started finding sea routes around Africa and across the Atlantic, they weren't doing it because it was easy or cheap. Those voyages were dangerous and expensive. They did it because it gave them strategic advantages over competitors who controlled the traditional overland trade routes. The age of exploration fundamentally rewired global trade patterns and shifted the balance of power between nations. We might be watching something similar happen right now. Not the discovery of new continents, obviously, but the opening of new trade corridors that reshape economic geography. And just like in the age of exploration, the countries that successfully develop and control these new routes will gain enormous strategic advantages. The environmental implications are worth mentioning too, even though they're often ignored in these discussions. The Arctic is one of the planet's last relatively pristine ecosystem. Increasing ship traffic means noise pollution affecting marine mammals, risk of oil spills in waters where cleanup is extremely difficult, disruption of migration routes, atmospheric pollution in a climatically sensitive region. These are real costs that aren't reflected in shipping fees, but economic incentives are powerful. The potential savings and strategic benefits are measured in billions of dollars and significant geopolitical advantage. Environmental concerns, unfortunately, tend to take a backseat to those kinds of numbers. It's not right, but it's reality. Looking ahead, the question isn't really whether the Arctic route will become important. The melting ice and the economic incentives make that almost inevitable. The question is how quickly it happens and how the rest of the world adapts. The United States will need to accept that it no longer has a monopoly on maritime trade routes. European countries will need to navigate their relationships with both China and Russia carefully. Middle Eastern countries that rely on transit fees might need to diversify their economies. This is what the shift to a multipolar world actually looks like in practice. Not dramatic military confrontations or sudden political upheaval, but gradual changes in infrastructure that slowly shift where power and influence flow. It's less exciting than a spy thriller, but it's probably more consequential in the long run. China didn't open an Arctic shipping route by accident. It's part of a comprehensive strategy to diversify trade pathways, reduce strategic vulnerability, and build alternatives to Western-controlled infrastructure. The route exists because China identified a problem, invested in solving it, and executed the plan over several years. That's not luck. That's strategic planning. Whether you think that's brilliant or concerning probably depends on your perspective. But either way, it's happening. Container ships are sailing through Arctic waters right now, carrying goods from Chinese factories to European markets, completely bypassing the traditional choke points that have defined global trade for generations. That's not speculation about the future. That's reality today. And it's only going to become more common as the ice continues to melt and the infrastructure continues to develop. Welcome to 21st century geopolitics, where the most important battles aren't fought with weapons, but with container ships, railway tracks, and port agreement. It's less dramatic than traditional warfare, but the stakes are just as high. Control of trade routes has always been a form of power. China is building new trade routes. Connect the dots.